Welcome to the amazing world of automobiles, where we explore the rich and sometimes quirky history of the machine that changed the world. While cars can now be seen on every continent and in virtually every city, town and village on the planet, for the very earliest cars, we must look to Germany. It was there that two inventors gave us the earliest reliable motor vehicles. Niklaus Otto built an engine that would be the basis for hundreds of millions more, while Karl built the first motorized vehicles. After the Second World War, the rebuilding of Germany's industry was illustrated by new cars on display at the post-war Hanover show. The new Hansa car hinted at the future with big plans for mass production, despite a world shortage of steel. Factories celebrated production milestones for trucks destined for peaceful, not military use. And the arrival of a new vehicle which would become the world's most popular car, the Volkswagen Beetle. Economic prosperity and a brighter future was already being predicted by vehicle manufacturers. Here's the beginning that started it all. The very first example of the machine that would change the world. Karl Benz's three-wheeled, self-propelled, petrol-engined carriage. His wife and sons borrowed the prototype and drove 100 kilometers to visit her mother. Gottlieb Daimler had built a motorcycle a year earlier, but Benz patented his work first. Early cars weren't easy to start, offered no more weather protection than horse-drawn wagons, and like this turn-of-the-century Opel Lutzmann, weren't very easy to drive. But children loved chasing after them, and some older folk can still remember the first time they ever saw a motorcar. As soon as two cars appeared in the same town, people wanted to know which was faster, so motor racing very soon became a sport, and once again it was Germany leading the way. Early drivers had a mechanic riding with them, and cars had chains driving the rear wheels. In 1909, the 21-litre Blitzen Benz answered the question about speed by going over 200 kilometers an hour. This was faster than most trains and aircraft, a record which stood for 8 years. 6 of the mighty beasts were built, and just 2 survive. By the 1920s, car design had taken giant strides in terms of comfort, convenience, styling and performance. The Mercedes 500, in varying body styles, became the preferred car of the rich and famous. Snakeskin seat covers, mother-of-pearl inlays in the dashboard, conspicuous, sweeping fenders, everything was possible. And the cars were fitted with superchargers to boost their performance. These cars are fabulously valuable now, 3 generations after they were built. They're lavishly maintained by their lucky owners, who relish everything about the way they perform.
Well, it's a good thing. They do it, first of all, for also fueling consumption today. With the old stuff, it kicks in automatically by pressing the full throttle, and today it just comes in, or it runs all the time. So with our cars it's a little different, because immediately you feel the amount of power, additional power, which goes into the engine and feel it on the tires. They spin.
Car companies soon realized the worth of motorsport to demonstrate their products. What wins on Sunday sells on Monday. After an interruption for another world war, racing again proved popular, and once they were allowed to compete, the German teams were again at the forefront of engineering excellence. Believing the motto that racing improves the breed, and working within tight rules, Mercedes produced highly competitive cars for the World Championships. One of the team's top drivers was Argentine Juan Manuel Fangio, who would win a total of 5 World Championships, though not all for the Silver Arrows team.
The Grand Prix of Europe gets underway at Nürburgring in Germany. This is the 3rd round in the duel between the Mercedes and the Ferraris. The race is of 22 laps, totaling 312 miles. The Mercedes hang on to their lead. 18 and 19, Fangio and Kling, flash past almost together. The halfway stage now, and it looks like a German victory. Fangio's on the last lap, but he dare not relax. Hawthorne and Trentino are not far away. Fangio hangs grimly onto his lead, and in he comes to snatch victory in the Grand Prix. Hawthorne is second, Trentino third. So the Mercedes have beaten the Ferraris again. Fangio, mobbed by an almost fanatical crowd, is congratulated by Federal President Hoyt.
50 years later, another Mercedes driving world champion, Finnish Mika Häkkinen, took a seat in the beautiful car which at least looked like a road car, certainly not the case today. Unlike their former drivers, these cars live on in museums and private collections. In 1955, the Mille Miglia, a race of 1,000 miles on public Italian roads, was won by a British Mercedes racing driver, Stirling Moss, and his countryman Dennis Jenkinson, a motoring journalist and former world champion sidecar passenger. With backing from the team all around Italy, and using what would become known as pace notes in rallying, they won the event in just a shade over 10 hours, an average speed of about 160 kilometers an hour. From its earliest days, Mercedes has always built stylish, fast and extremely well-engineered cars. Named originally after the young daughter of one of the company's earliest customers, Emil Jelinek, Mercedes has been at the forefront of automotive engineering. The cars, ranging from humble suburban runabouts to the mighty Maybach executive limousines, are at the market's edge for innovations in safety and convenience. Undeniably more expensive than many of their rivals, cars bearing the three-pointed star retain their value better than most, last longer, and seem to withstand rough treatment better. Not for nothing are most of the taxis in the world built by Mercedes. Yet their sporting prowess isn't hidden by luxurious appointments. This is the Mercedes AMG SLS. It's the first car built by their AMG Tuning and Performance division and isn't based on any existing Mercedes model.
Our aim with the SLS AMG was obvious. It had to be an uncompromising supersports car with the development expertise and complete history of AMG Motorsport rolled into one. But we did not only want to live up to the legend, we wanted more than that. We wanted to create our own legend. To be able to define, design, perform and develop a car completely from scratch with nothing but a blank piece of paper to start with. It is a dream come true.
But there are many other superb cars that come from Germany, and each has a fascinating history. Tales of survival, rebirth and evolution after two devastating wars in the 20th century. Names like Audi, BMW, Porsche and Opel join Mercedes-Benz in thrilling drivers around the world. BMW originally made aircraft engines. To this day, the badge on their cars and motorcycles represents a spin-in propeller. Their cars and their bikes are built to make the most of the advanced system of high-speed roads, or autobahns, that spans Germany. Building the new kind of road provided work for tens of thousands of men during times of economic hardship. Hard physical labour, but the result was a world-class network of motorways, which are still the envy of the world. This visionary undertaking would lay the cornerstone of sporting German automobiles for nearly a century. Bridges needed to be built too, and in the search for efficiency, German inventors created machines which could do the work of many men. In August 1932, the new road between the cities of Bonn and Cologne was opened by Konrad Adenauer, then Mayor of Cologne and the future Chancellor of West Germany. When he took power in January 1933, Adolf Hitler enthusiastically embraced an ambitious autobahn construction project. The roads linked much of the country and encouraged a new wave of motorized tourists from outside Germany to visit the country. Car designers and drivers were quick to make the most of the wide, safe road network which forward-thinking civil engineers had created. The autobahn allowed ordinary people to drive long distances in their own cars, enjoying the countryside along the way. Although autobahns are regarded by many drivers around the world as being roads entirely without speed limits, this is not really the case. Originally, the maximum design speed was approximately 80 kilometers an hour in flat country. Nowadays, the speed limit is generally 130 kilometers an hour. As the system expanded, ancient German cities were now linked, and it was possible to travel between them in a fraction of the time previously taken. Much of the rest of the world was slow to copy the concept, but German car makers now had a reason to design cars which would cruise at higher speeds and were quieter, smoother and safer to drive at high speed. features which are key to many German vehicles to this day. The autobahns became the first limited-access, high-speed road network in the world. The section from Frankfurt to Darmstadt opened in 1935, and its straight section was used for high-speed record attempts by the Grand Prix racing teams from Mercedes-Benz and Auto Union, until a fatal accident involving popular German racing driver Bernd Rossemeyer in early 1938. During World War II, many sections of the road network were damaged by bombing and military demolition. In the former West Germany, most existing autobahns were soon repaired, and in the 1950s, the West German government started to expand the network, investing in new sections and improvements to older ones. Some final sections weren't opened until the 1980s, and some sections cut by the Iron Curtain in 1945 were only completed after German reunification in 1990. Today, Germany's autobahn network has a total length of about 12,200 kilometers, the third longest in the world, behind the interstate highways of the United States and the People's Republic of China. One of the cars to enjoy the rebuilt road network was the Opel Kadett A, the first post-war Opel and intended to counter the rampantly successful people's car, the Volkswagen Beetle. Much more modern in design, it took Opel 5 years to develop the new Kadett under such secrecy that even now very little is known of its development history. 650,000 were built in 3 years, and Opel is one of the world's oldest car makers. In 1909, the reliability and robustness of the Doktorswagen appealed to physicians who made house calls when surfaced roads were rare. The doctor's car sold for about half as much as luxury models of its day. Opel was the first German car maker to use a mass production assembly line, and in 1924 produced a new open two-seater called the Laubfrosch, finished exclusively in green lacquer. In 1935, Opel produced over 100,000 vehicles, including the first mass-production vehicle with a self-supporting all-steel body, the Olympia. With low weight and aerodynamics came better performance and fuel consumption. In 1939, the Capitan had a 2.5-litre six-cylinder engine, all-steel body, front independent suspension, hydraulic shock absorbers and a heater. 25,000 Capitans were built before World War II. The Olympia record was introduced in 1953 to replace the Olympia, which dated back to 1935. The Olympia record was built until 1957 in 4 versions, and about 580,000 of them were made. Breaking with utilitarian tradition, the Opel GT was a 2-seater sports car, first presented as a styling exercise in 1965 and introduced as a production model late in 1968. It relied partly on components from the contemporary Kadett, but the body was made in France. By 1973, when production ended, over 100,000 cars had been sold. A slightly larger car, but with similar lines, was the Manta, released in 1970, based on the Opel Ascona as a rival to the Ford Capri. It was a 2-door coupe with space for 5, and according to this advert, their luggage. The only difference between the Ascona and Manta was exterior sheet metal, glass and trim. The frame, all the mechanicals, dash, front seats and many other parts were shared between the two cars. You don't need to understand German to follow this advert for the car, and it must have done some good. In 5 years of production, they sold in the thousands all around the world. The modern Opel is a very international German car. American General Motors bought a controlling interest in the company in 1929 and bought the rest 2 years later. The Opel Technical Center in Rüsselsheim is the core of General Motors' international product development, design and technology. Yet Opel was within days of being sold by GM late in 2009, when the parent company was facing bankruptcy. Some Opel models are rebadged as Buicks in America, Vauxhalls in Britain, Holdens in Australia, and after the Second World War, the pre-war Kadett was built in Russia as a Moskvich. Now the company designs and builds over 1 million cars a year. Safe, stylish and environmentally responsible, there's an Opel model that's right for almost everyone. Audi is a modern brand that goes back a century. In 1909, August Horch left the company he founded after a dispute and set up Audi, it being the Latinization of Porsche. In 1928, DKW bought a majority holding in Audi, and in 1932, Audi, DKW, Porsche and Wanderer merged to form Auto Union. The new company's logo was 4 interlinked rings, one for each of the founder companies. Auto Union is best known for its racing team. The silver arrows of the two German teams, Mercedes-Benz and Auto Union, dominated Grand Prix racing from 1934 onwards, but set records that would take decades to beat. After the war, Soviet forces took 13 Auto Union team racing cars to Russia. They went to the Soviet Motor Industry Research Institute in Moscow, where a group of engineers investigated the dazzlingly high-tech German designs. All the cars were dismantled and effectively destroyed. For half a century, the survival in Russia of ex-works German Silver Arrows Grand Prix cars from the 1930s seemed only a myth. The search for cars from Mercedes-Benz or Auto Union was historic motorsport's holy grail.
This is the definitive Auto Union. They progressively improved the car, and they introduced this particular model for the 1938 season, by which time Grand Prix regulations said that you had to have a 3-litre car. This is therefore a 3-litre V12 Auto Union. It's very, very similar to a modern Grand Prix car. You've got the driver sitting ahead of the engine, you've got independent front and rear suspension, and even in shape and concept, it's just like a modern Grand Prix car. It's quite extraordinary.
Russian-born American Paul Karasik spent years hunting down the truth of the Auto Union legend. He built a treasure trove of pre-war Grand Prix car parts, including complete chassis number 19 and the V12 engine which powers it today. It was extensively restored and was set to be auctioned, but on the eve of the sale it was withdrawn, as doubts over quite which car it was had arisen. It is quite literally the last of the breed. Motorsport became a vital part of the marketing of high-performance road cars and the propaganda of technical excellence. Hitler set up generous funding for the Mercedes and Auto Union racing teams. The German teams completely dominated the interwar years, though racing aces were often short-lived. The team's young superstar Bernd Rossemeyer died in a land speed record attempt trying to better the 432 km/h mark set by Mercedes driver Rudi Caracciola earlier in the day. After the war, a new Auto Union was launched with loans from the Bavarian state government and Marshall Plan aid. Only the DKW brand survived in post-war West Germany, producing front-wheel drive vehicles with two-stroke engines. Many employees of the destroyed factories in Zwickau came to Ingolstadt and restarted the production. 1958 was a turning point with the return of the Auto Union brand with a small 1000 saloon, and with Daimler-Benz taking control of the company. By the time the DKW Junior became the F12 in 1963, the market was shifting to cleaner 4-stroke 4-cylinder engines, which were becoming more powerful and cheaper to produce. Now, a thoroughly modern range of cars wears the 4-ring symbol. After just 5 years, Daimler-Benz sold Auto Union to Volkswagen, who dumped the DKW brand and called its new cars Audi. Modern Audis are technically advanced and uniquely styled. The two-door, two-seater TT model used a new laser beam welding method which enabled seamless bodywork. The TT takes its name from the racing history of NSU in the Isle of Man Tourist Trophy. NSU began competing in the TT in 1911, and its tradition lives on in the modern Audi. At the other end of the passenger car scale is the all-wheel drive Q7, a cross between a rugged four-wheel drive and a family station wagon. The Quattro all-wheel drive system is a hallmark of modern Audis and gives the cars superb grip and handling. The Le Mans concept car celebrated Audi's victories in the 24-hour race, and the response was so strong they put it into production, and thus was born the R8. But it is Volkswagen that is the modern giant of the German car industry. In the early 1930s, the average German could rarely afford more than a motorcycle. In 1933, Adolf Hitler announced a state-sponsored Volkswagen program, a basic vehicle to carry 2 adults and 3 children at 100 kilometers an hour. The people's car would be available to citizens through a savings scheme at about the price of a small motorcycle. A new state-owned factory was built, and engineer Ferdinand Porsche was chosen to design and build the people's car. A new city was built around the factory, but both were heavily damaged in the war. In fact, it was an occupying British Army officer who saved Volkswagen from the fate of outer union. Major Ivan Hurst convinced the British Army to order 20,000 cars, and the company was saved from oblivion. Eventually, over 21 million Beetles would be built and sold before production ceased in 2003, nearly 70 years after it all began. Soon, the recovering German economy required a delivery vehicle, so the Volkswagen Type 2 was created using a Beetle's mechanical parts with a van body. The transporter became a bus, camper van and pickup truck, and its descendants are still being built and sold around the world. Along the way, it's become a cult vehicle and was a cornerstone of the hippie generation, a people mover from before the expression was invented. From the iconic split-window models to the later camper vans and even all-wheel drive luxury models, the so-called Kombi was probably seen on the roads and streets of every country in the world. Nowadays, Volkswagen is a major player in the global automotive industry. The company sells 19 different models of passenger vehicle, some of which are available in many variants and others as little commercial vehicles. There are VW factories not only in Germany and Eastern Europe, but also in the US, Mexico, Brazil and South Africa. The cars are stylish, affordable and long-lasting, but most of all, they're fun to drive. In 1998, VW released the new Beetle, but there was little real similarity with its famous forebear. The newcomer is based on the front-engine, front-wheel drive Golf model. Its iconic predecessor had its engine in the back, driving the rear wheels. Happily, VW takes its history seriously and has invested in a vast museum near the factory in Wolfsburg. Another famous name closely associated with VW is Porsche. The company's founding engineer created a sports car maker that has been joined at the hip to VW since its earliest days, and it too has a museum. Before the war, Porsche designed and built 3 cars for a race from Berlin to Rome that was cancelled. In 1948, the 356 prototype, called Number 1, was completed. The 356 was created by Ferry Porsche, son of Ferdinand Porsche, founder of the company. Unlike functional Volkswagen, Porsche has always been about performance, on the road and equally on the track. Mostly it's the long-distance races like the 24 Hours of Le Mans that Porsche has made its own. Sleek Porsche races have been campaigned by world champions and privateers alike, and the factory's museum maintains a collection of winning prototypes, sending them to displays and motorsport celebrations around the world. But it's not just on closed-circuit long-distance events where Porsche has excelled. As far back as the 1968 Monte Carlo Rally, Britain's Vic Elford and David Stone steered a modified 911 road car to victory in the premier rally event. Like the Volkswagen Type 1 Beetle, the Porsche 911 is the company's mainstay model and shared many design features with its humble cousin. It evolved over the years but remains one of the world's most desirable sports cars more than 40 years after its introduction.
Prince Rainier and Princess Grace of Monaco arrived to present the award to the champions of the 1968 Monte Carlo Rally.
The exterior shape, together with all the special technical details we have in the new 911 Turbo, justify that this car is the head of our model range, the highlight. Of course, it needs to be the leader in terms of performance and at the same time the leader in terms of efficiency. For this reason, we worked intensively in the drivetrain, engine and gearbox dynamics, as well as on the driving performance, and the car has a redesigned optic. We worked on the exterior design as well as slightly in the interior. Now we come to one of the absolute highlights of the new 911 Turbo, the power plant. We have maximum power of 500 horsepower, and we can deliver 650 Newton meters of torque. In addition, with our sports chrono package, we can ramp up the Newton meters up to 700 in order to accelerate this car in 3.4 seconds from 0 to 100, or in 11.6 seconds from 0 to 200. Another highlight to be demonstrated in the back of this car are the active drive mounts that make it possible that the car can be, on the one side, driven very performance oriented when the mountings are very stiff, and that it also can be a little bit more comfortable when the mounts are a little bit more open and give the engine more room to maneuver in the back of the car. We now are in the chapter of Porsche torque vectoring. Porsche torque vectoring is adding much more driving dynamics that we could deliver up to now. With this new system, we are able to individually break down the right or left rear wheel in case the system understands it's going into understeer on the front axle. So we really make it possible that the car follows the line that the driver points on with his steering wheel and have maximum acceleration from mid-turn outward through a complete differential lock at the rear axle. The double clutch system now can be operated with pedal shifters directly at the steering wheel, on the right side to shift up, on the left side to shift down. And together with our different programs, you can pick when you press the Sports or the Sports Plus button, we are able to deliver shifting times that are either very comfortable or that are close to racing applications from our motorsports department.
Originally a military aircraft engine maker, after World War I, BMW was obliged to build more peaceful machines. Motorcycles came in 1923 and cars 5 years later. The car business has seen the company produce sporting, family and executive cars that follow the motto, sheer driving pleasure. It took just 5 weeks to develop the first BMW motorcycle, and the bike was quickly pressed into service on the racetrack. A hallmark of the design is the flat twin engine and shaft drive to the back wheel, a characteristic which has endured almost uninterrupted into the 21st century. Such was the quality and durability of that first rushed design that BMW bikes are the choice of global adventurers, law enforcement agencies and sporting riders around the world. In 1928, BMW moved on to 4 wheels with the Dixie, a replica of the British Austin 7 built under license. They were made in large numbers and in various styles. Though small, the Dixie could reach 75 kilometers an hour and was just the right car for a difficult period in German history. The 315 Sport Roadster reflected a better era. Stylish, fast and a pleasure to drive, it saw the arrival of BMW's trademark double-kidney radiator design. By 1936, a new modular system of design meant several new models could be produced, including comfortable touring cars like the BMW 326 Cabrio and the elegant 327 Coupe, and the 328, the fastest 2-litre sports car of its era. Only 464 were built before 1940, but in its 4 years of production, the 328 won the RAC Rally, won its class in the Le Mans 24-hour, and won the Mille Miglia. In 1938, BMW's largest car, the 3.5-litre 335 Touring, was revealed in London. Bigger, heavier and capable of 145 kilometers an hour, the new model was perfect for cruising on Germany's impressive new autobahn network. But with war again on the horizon, only about 400 335s were ever delivered, and after the war the factory was under Soviet control, so production of the 335 was never restarted. During the war, BMW's factory was again focused on building aero engines, with BMW even developing an early jet towards the end of the conflict. The only vehicle still built was the R75 motorcycle and sidecar, built for the Army as a machine gun transporter. With drive to the sidecar wheel, These hardy bikes were used from the deserts of North Africa to the snow of the Russian front. After the war, cheap transport was again in short supply, and in 1948 the R24 was born, using just one of the two cylinders from the flat twin engine. It was soon replaced by a more modern version of the two-cylinder engine. The 501 was a big six-cylinder saloon produced in 1951 and offered for sale between 1952 and 64. It was joined in 1954 by the 502, a V8 version of the same car. The BMW 503 is a two-door, 2+2-seater sports car unveiled at the 1955 Frankfurt Motor Show. And by 1959, when the 503 was withdrawn, 413 had been built, including 139 cabrios. Such low numbers couldn't sustain a company, and it was the Isetta, called a bubble car for its shape, which gave BMW most of its sales. This German cartoon explains the need for a small car, and the solution in the shape of the Isetta. The Isetta was one of the most successful microcars produced in the post-war years, a time when cheap, short-distance transportation was most needed. Although the design originated in Italy, it was built in a number of different countries. BMW redesigned the power plant around their single-cylinder 250cc motorcycle engine and re-engineered much of the car. The first BMW Isetta appeared in April 1955. In Germany, the Isetta could even be driven with a motorcycle license, and its top speed was rated as 85 km an hour. There were several different variants produced, each significantly engineered by BMW. Curiously, the entire front panel hinged aside to make the vehicle's only door, taking the steering column with it. In May 1962, 3 years after launching the conventionally modern-looking 700, BMW ceased production of Isettas. A total of 161,000 units had been built. A later version, the 600, was an enlarged Isetta with more power and a more conventional four-wheel layout. The front end of the 600 was virtually unchanged from the Isetta, but the 600's wheelbase was stretched to accommodate 4 seats. A conventional rear axle was added, as was semi-trailing arm independent suspension, and this design would be used on almost every new model for the next 4 decades. Because of the increased size and weight, the 600 had a more powerful engine than the Isetta. It had a twin-cylinder engine from the R67 motorcycle, and its top speed was 103 km an hour. In 2 years, only 34,000 600s were produced, partly due to price competition with the VW Beetle, and partly because by the late 1950s, consumers wanted cars that looked like cars, and they'd lost interest in economy models. Sales of the 600 were aided a little by the energy crisis of 1956. The new class were compact 4-door sedans and 2-door coupes, starting with the 1962 1500. Precursors to the 3 Series, the 2 doors cemented BMW's future as a top-tier performance carmaker. The natural progression was the 2-door sports coupe, built from 1968 to 75, using a straight-six engine of 2.5, 2.8 or 3 litres. It was very successful in racing, and the CSL model is now highly collectible. The M1 Coupe was hand-built between 1978 and 1981 by the Motorsport division of BMW as a homologation special for sports car racing. The body was designed by Giugiaro, taking inspiration from the 1972 Turbo show car. Originally, BMW commissioned Lamborghini to work out the details of the car's chassis, assemble prototypes and manufacture the vehicles. But Lamborghini's financial position meant that BMW took control over the project in 1978, after 7 prototypes were built. Only 456 production M1s were ever built, making it one of BMW's rarest models. It was the only mass-produced mid-engine BMW and used a 3.5-litre twin-cam 6-cylinder engine. A version of this motor was later used in the South African version of the BMW 735i, of which 209 examples were built between 1984 and 86. The spirit of the M1 lived on in the first generation M5, as they shared the same engine. The M5 is a high-performance version of the 5 Series. Introduced at the 1984 Amsterdam show, the hand-built prototype M5 was the fastest production saloon in the world. Thanks to the longevity of its parent vehicle, the M5 remains one of the best known and most respected sporting road cars in the world.
Introducing the new M5, BMW is maintaining its general limitation of the car speed to 250 kilometers per hour, or 155 miles per hour.
The 5 Series has eventually produced a high-performance M5 variant, but the line almost stopped in 1998. Only when Jaguar and Mercedes built high-performance rivals did BMW respond with a new M5.
In German, we say the chassis must be faster than the engine. In this case, we modified all technical parts under the body. So, for example, we developed a special electronic damper system and also a special dynamic stability system. The result is this car is very fast, safe and easy to drive.
The M5 has a very special gearbox with 7 speeds. Changes can be made with paddles on the steering wheel or by moving the gear lever.
Well, in our opinion, the new sequential M gearbox is the most sportive and efficient gearbox for such a car. It was specially and exclusive developed for the new M5. No manual gearbox can be handled faster than this SMG.
Probably the ultimate driver's car is the 5-litre V10 M5 that offers 500 horsepower. Although 100 of it is only available through a sequence of setting changes. It's both a high-end luxury 4-door saloon and a hugely powerful, extremely refined sporting car. Onboard technology extends to this head-up display, which projects critical information onto the windscreen so the driver doesn't need to look away from the road. Front sensors help with parking and a smart radar-controlled cruise control that doesn't let the M5 get too close to slower traffic ahead. The car can also switch on its headlights and wipers if needed. But happily, BMW hasn't entirely lost sight of its 4-wheeled roots and also builds smaller cars, including the revitalized Mini, which along with Britain's other icon, Rolls-Royce, it has owned for several years. Whether the Mini is part of the German car industry or the British will be argued about for years, but BMW has produced the successor to the original Mini since April 2001. Currently, 4 body variants are available: hardtop, convertible, clubman wagon and countryman, which is an all-wheel drive crossover. The early Mini, Cooper and Cooper S used versions of a reliable Brazilian-built petrol engine developed by Chrysler and BMW, or a Toyota-built diesel engine. In August 2006, BMW announced that future engines would be built in the UK, making the car British-built again. The designers working on the prototypes finished the full-size clay mock-up of the Mini for a presentation to the board of directors. When chief designer Frank Stevenson realized that the model didn't have an exhaust pipe, his quick fix involved pushing an empty beer can into the clay at the back of the car. The design was approved by the board, who told him not to change a thing. The reason for the distinctive exhaust seen on production cars. Mini concept cars come thick and fast from the team of imaginative designers. Experiments and ideas first seen on cars like these often end up in production. The crossover concept was unveiled at the 2008 Paris Motor Show. It has 4-wheel drive, wide tyres and a retractable rear window. Inside it has a large glass ball in the instrument panel, called the Mini Center Globe, which uses laser projection technology for 3D navigation routes and films. A production version based on the crossover concept will be built in 2011, called the Mini Countryman. The coupe concept was a 2-seat concept vehicle unveiled in 2009 at the Frankfurt Motor Show and inspired by the classic Mini. A production version of this car will be built, probably also in 2011. In December 2009, Mini revealed the Beachcomber concept. It draws on the Mokes style, but is packed with modern equipment. The Beachcomber concept uses the Countryman all-wheel drive platform, and it too may go into production.
With a fully electric powertrain, the Mini E offers a whole new world of emission-free driving fun. This electric Mini is a breakthrough of the Mini brand into a new age of mobility. There will soon be over 500 Mini E's tested in everyday urban driving in the United States and in Germany. Our customers' feedback will assist us in developing a series of production vehicles within the BMW Group. Now, we chose Mini for this field test because Mini is the ideal city car.
Another field test was launched in the UK in December 2009, where more than 40 Mini E-cars were handed to private users for 6-month field trial periods. This program made BMW the world's first major car manufacturer with a fleet of more than 500 all-electric vehicles in private use. BMW is using Mini to test the market for electric powertrain technology. The Mini factory in Oxford supplies cars without powertrains to a team in Munich, which adds the electric running gear. Power comes from an electric motor that's rated at 150 kilowatts, driving the front wheels. Lithium-ion batteries weigh 259 kilograms and replace the back seat. Top speed is limited to 155 kilometers an hour, and range is 250 kilometers on a single charge under ideal conditions. Estimates of normal driving give ranges of 175 kilometers in the city and 150 kilometers of highway driving. The Mini E can be charged through 110 and 220 volt power sources, and charging times are 20 hours or 3.5 hours on fast charge.
This vehicle is a plug-in hybrid, meaning that it has two drivetrains. It has a 3-cylinder diesel engine, very small engine, and it has electric drive. And the vehicle can drive electrically, and when it does so, then you have zero emission, of course, and no noise. And then once you get on the highway, you can use both drivetrains, so also the diesel engine, and then the car will perform like you would expect from a BMW. The acceleration would be like an M3 and the top speed as well. So I think this vehicle for the first time shows that efficiency and emotion or ultimate driving pleasure can go together. What I find fascinating about this vehicle is that we actually managed, together with our engineers, to build a vehicle that is purely designed with efficient dynamics in mind, but the end result is something highly emotional and very appealing, I believe, to the eye. And those are two things which I think are going to be very important in the future, that we continue to offer beautiful, fascinating vehicles that are going to be very, very efficient. Many of the technologies that we have in this vehicle would be possible in the near future. Some of them we already have in production. So the goal of a vehicle like this is to show the way and then also inspire our customers and people in the company for these new technologies and this new look.
The chassis is mostly aluminium, and the windscreen, roof, doors and body are made from polycarbonate glass with a drag coefficient of just 0.22. Opel are looking towards a future without cheap oil for transport too, and have built a working example of a hybrid electric car they call Ampera.
You know, the Ampera is a true electric vehicle. You always, drive on electric energy. You have a pretty large lithium-ion battery on board, which drives directly electric motor all the time. And then you have a little generator and a internal combustion engine, which actually, works as a range extender. That means when your battery is out of capacity, this engine actually starts and you can actually keep going. That means you have no distance restrictions. The vehicle with a normal, tank of gas can go easily 350, 400 kilometers.
The Ampera shares a platform with the Chevrolet Volt, built by Opel's parent General Motors, and the two cars are nearly identical. Where the Volt has horizontal slits at the front corners for headlights, the Ampera has big gouges going down from those headlights to the fog lamps, but the roofline is basically the same. The Opel lightning bolt badge is probably more appropriate for an electric car too. The Ampera has a lithium-ion battery in the centre of the car, and the electric motor and petrol engine are in the front of the car. The Ampera is intended to do the majority of its driving under electric power alone, while longer drives will cause the engine to kick in and send electricity to the motor. The Ampera will go for about 60 kilometers under electric power alone before requiring a top-up. Not to be outdone, Porsche announced a Cayenne SUV hybrid, in part to counter criticism of the high-performance Cayenne 4x4, which is seen as very unfriendly to the environment. The petrol-electric powertrain is a joint venture with Volkswagen and Audi, and is a so-called full hybrid, meaning the vehicle can run on either or both power sources. The petrol engine is an Audi 3-litre V6, while the electric drive uses a nickel metal hydride battery pack that weighs 70 kilograms, produces a peak of 288 volts, and is small enough to fit in the spare wheel well. An electric motor that also doubles as a starter and generator mounts between the engine and a new 8-speed automatic transmission, without the usual torque converter. Petrol or electric, the transmission assembly drives all four wheels, as in other Cayennes, and Porsche expects the hybrid will have around a 25% better fuel economy. Porsche terms its hybrids as an inline configuration because the electric motor sits between the engine and transmission, rather than off to one side. The hybrid system adds about 140 kilograms to the normal V6 Cayenne's 2,200 kilogram curb weight. That includes the 40 kilogram hybrid manager, claimed to be the most powerful computer ever used in a vehicle. The Cayenne can run solely on electric power up to 50 kilometers an hour, which is high for a hybrid, and company engineers have run on volts alone at up to 135 kilometers an hour on a steady throttle, which would be a real fuel saver on the highway. Like most hybrids, the Cayenne system has a regenerative braking function that turns the motor into a generator for charging the battery when coasting or braking. The Smart 4.2 electric drive, or Smart ED, is a battery electric vehicle version of the small 4.2 car. The first smart electric drive vehicles were regular cars, modified by Zytec and powered by a rear-mounted motor driving the rear wheels. The second generation Smart 4.2 electric drive is leased to customers in Berlin and other cities in Europe and the USA. They'll subject the car to intensive real-world testing in everyday conditions, and from 2012 it'll be available to anyone who's interested. The Daimler-owned city car manufacturer Smart announced that they will be in full-scale production of an electric car in 2012. They'll manufacture the Smart 4.2 electric drive at Daimler's factory in northeastern France. Opened 12 years ago, the plant employs 1,600 workers, and they produce about 140,000 units of the Smart 4.2 every year. As of 2012, the Smart 4.2 electric will be part of the regular production program at the factory. The car's lithium-ion battery comes from a deal made with Tesla Motors, the US builder of a high-performance electric-powered sports car. The 4.2 electric will be powered by a 30-kilowatt motor, capable of getting the car up to 50 kilometers an hour in about 6.5 seconds. It'll be able to travel about 135 kilometers on a single charge, but in keeping with its city car image, top speed is restricted to 100 kilometers an hour. Not to be left out, Mercedes has a hybrid model of its executive S-Class. The S400 hybrid boasts a fuel economy of 7.9 litres to 100 kilometres and is said to be the world's first production hybrid vehicle to use a lithium-ion battery. It has a 3.5-litre petrol engine that produces 205 kilowatts and a 15-kilowatt electric motor. Most next-generation concept cars have futuristic dashboards and power consumption monitors, but the Mercedes F-Cell hybrid Roadster looks back over a century into the past. The Roadster can only manage 25 kilometers an hour with an operating range of 350 kilometers, but the hybrid shines in the design department, blending the style of the original Benz patent motor car with seats and a nose inspired by Formula One. And with a joystick in place of a steering wheel, it would seem to be a vehicle designed for the computer game generation, which is hardly surprising. It was designed and built by more than 150 young trainees and education students at the Mercedes-Benz plant in Sindelfingen in Germany. The technicians and engineers of the future worked with their counterparts from the fields of electronics, coatings technology, automotive mechatronics and interior design. The objective of the project was to integrate alternative drive systems into training with hands-on experience. The F-Cell hybrid probably won't make it to the market anytime soon, but it's a reminder that environmentally friendly cars don't have to share the same high-tech looks. But the retro-futuristic vehicle is more than a museum piece. A hydrogen-powered concept car took the same historic route, known as the first long-distance drive, that Bertha Benz took back in 1888. The F-Cell Roadster was driven from Mannheim to Weißloch and stopped at the same chemist shop where Mrs. Benz refueled over 120 years ago when she borrowed her husband's invention to visit her mother. Then Bertha couldn't just refuel at a convenient station as we do today, and the intrepid drivers of the fuel cell couldn't just top up with roadside hydrogen or electricity. But these are just some of the challenges facing the car industry of the 21st century. The high-tech vehicle harks back to the motor car's earliest days, proving that what is old is new again, and that some things at least have come full circle.